You are listening to 95.7 FM WELT, Fort Wayne, Radioactive. The opinions and views expressed in the show are those of the hosts and guests only. They do not represent those of FreeThought Fort Wayne, WELT, or any other organization. Welcome to the Hoosier Humanist Hour, where we explore science, religion, culture, ethics, and community from the humanist perspective. Join us as we discuss those topics and more, free from the ideologies of religion and superstition.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Hoosier Humanist Hour. The Hoosier Humanist Hour is brought to you by volunteers from FreeThought Fort Wayne Incorporated in affiliation with the American Humanist Association. My name is Caleb. I'm joined today by Chris and Andrew, and we are also joined by a special guest, Josh. He's here to kind of ask us questions about what we do, about FreeThought Fort Wayne Incorporated, about humanism, etc. I thought this would be a great opportunity to kind of get an outside voice. And also, it's very possible that Josh might become a long-term volunteer for the Hoosier Humanist Hour. So I thought this would be a great way to get his feet wet, so keep that in mind. So anyway, I'll go ahead and get right to it, man. I'll pass the ball right on to you. What you got for us?
So me being just an open-minded individual, I was really intrigued by the humanist concept, atheist humanism, whichever it may be. And I don't personally identify with a particular religion or particular, I wouldn't say myself as an atheist, but I am a humanist. At least that's what I would classify myself. Mm-hmm. So today I just kind of want to bounce off what does humanist mean, atheist mean, where does other people stand between secularism?
Okay, well, let's hit the pause right there because that's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, certainly you do not have to be an atheist to be a humanist. There are several members of FreeThought, for example, that I know who are theists in some way. Most of them are deists. Do you know the difference between a theist and a deist?
I do not.
Okay, well, a theist is somebody who ascribes to a particular religion, or at the very least, the idea that a deity, a god of some kind, intervenes within reality, usually on our behalf for some reason. It doesn't really matter how. A deist is somebody who thinks that it's more likely than not that a god of some sort, a creator at least, created the universe, possibly overseas, but doesn't necessarily intervene, or if it does, in undetectable ways, is to make it indistinguishable from that which doesn't exist anyway. So that's the main distinction between theism and deism. So with that in mind, humanism is essentially secularism applied. Do you know what secularism is?
Hit me.
Okay, well, perhaps I should take a step back and really describe what humanism is then in that case. So obviously we have questions about humanism. Humanism is a philosophy that we aspire to make our moral and ethical decisions, and we behave as though, or rather under the assumption, that a deity or a god is not going to intervene in any way with human affairs. So in that sense, as before, as I mentioned, you can be a theist and be a humanist. And I encourage that. As a matter of fact, I would argue that there are more humanists out there than people realize. I would argue that a lot of people are humanists without even realizing it themselves. All you really need to do to qualify to be a humanist is to act in the real world as though a god isn't going to intervene without that assumption. So you can believe, for example, that God wants you to vote, one way because it says XYZ in your holy book, but you as a person realize that you live in a multicultural, pluralistic society, and therefore you're going to vote this way to accommodate the greater good. There are people that do that. I myself did that before I realized that I was a humanist. When I was still a theist, I was doing that. I had to jump through a lot of hoops to rationalize my morality, to kind of square it all together, to round that square, if you will. So humanism, again, to kind of make this extremely easy, is to act as if a God doesn't exist. That's essentially humanism in a nutshell, like a cookie or a fortune cookie style. Secularism is that applied politically, for the most part, or at the very least, publicly. So, for example, I ascribe to a lot of secular YouTube channels. Okay, some of these aren't, anti-theistic or religious or irreligious. They're just, they're like a-religious. They're just not religious. They're secular. Okay, so one of which that I can think of at the top of my head would be SciShow. This is a great outlet. They have several different classes of SciShow. There's the regular SciShow channel, and then there's also something, for example, called SciShow Philosophy. And these are excellent introductory courses into these particular topics. Now, they also have a religion one as well, and a mythology one, and they approach this secularly. So when they talk about things like the divine command theory, they simply explain it, but they don't preach it, if that makes sense. So that's really the biggest difference. You can explain religion, or you can preach religion, as far as I can tell. Does that answer your question?
It definitely helps. Would it be okay if, I think I've heard this to an extent already, maybe not as much so as now. Could I possibly get another input from another part of the community we've got on right now?
Sure.
Or if they want to say that what you hit was spot on, perfect.
Well, first, I'm curious, from what I said, do either of you guys disagree with anything? Because I'd like to be corrected if I'm wrong on something.
No, you have sounded pretty good.
Yeah, I guess.
Anything you guys want to add to it? Because just to help clarify, that way I get more than one input, so I can piece this together in different perspectives. Or did he hit that about as good as it can be?
Well, where's the confusion exactly? Can you kind of pin down what you're confused about?
I think it's what you said makes a lot of sense. I just didn't know if there was a different perspective.
I don't know. I guess I just have issues truly finding people that are religious and that I can honestly call humanists. That's really difficult for me to find.
Agreed.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the stigmas that I personally, I'm not suggesting that other humanists ought or even should do this. This is just where I'm at right now. But I'm actually trying to approach humanism to make it more appealing to people of religion. So every time that I talk about FreeThought Fort Wayne or I talk about humanism, I try to explain it in a quote secular way, and also to try to explain exactly what I explained to you, that you don't have to be an atheist, because there's a stigma against atheists in general, and we'll get to that. There's a huge stigma against atheists in this country. Yeah. And when you explain to people that the vast majority of your membership is atheist and they're essentially looking to proselytize for atheism, I mean, you can sugarcoat it, every which way but loose. And when you boil it down, really secularism is the goal. One way that we are trying to put this into practice as a community, not necessarily us at FreeThought, but as a community, the humanist and atheist movement. In Texas, there's a guy, his name is Aaron Ra. He was the president of the, I believe it was the American Humanist Association, but I could be wrong about that. But he was one of the head honchos in this movement. And he actually stepped down from his position because he wanted to run for a state representative in District 2 in Texas, okay? In his district, there hasn't been a single Democrat on the ballot in a decade. So in his mind, he knows he's going to lose. When interviewed, when asked, why are you doing this? I mean, essentially, you're throwing away your presidency at this other affiliation. Why would you do this? And his response is, we have to tug left on this. We can't go any further right on this. He's like, if you look at this county, this state, everything here, it's red, Republican, all the way down, and highly religious. It has been for a very long time. We can't go any further to the right. So all I am trying to do is just pull left. Any left is good. Before I heard him make that statement, I found myself on the opposite side of that argument. I was actually kind of bewildered that he would do that, because everybody knows he has no chance of winning. But after that statement, I have to agree. I'm an activist. I consider myself an activist anyway. And that sort of mission that he's on, I think that it's a really great first step. I think that's about as good as a first step as you could possibly have. You had somebody who's at the top of his game step down from that to help the people in his community because he feels that they need it. And that's a huge statement. And I can't say that I've ever done anything on that scale, but I hope to someday. I hope to be able to affect my community in such a way that I could say, on my deathbed, that I pulled left on that political rope, or at the very least, I gave it my all. That's why I find myself doing what I do.
I like it. I mean, so, I think all of this pieces together really well as I see it. I feel like I will fit. I think, if anything, more centrist, but I definitely lean left. Mm-hmm. And I also think more open, where, whether or not there's a God, I don't think that there is a need to praise, to limit my thought, if there is one. I think it's my job on this earth to do good for not just me, but for everybody.
And this is going to sound corny, but I'm curious.
That whole thing sounded corny.
Being good for goodness sake, right? Is that essentially what you're saying?
Not that corny.
Oh, well, thanks for me.
Just the idea is, I think, there's definitely ways I can negate and be bad from time to time. But I mean, when it comes down to bigger decisions and bigger conversations and meaningful thought, I want to produce a open topic and open statements that gravitate to people who don't speak like extremely well. They don't have an extensive vocabulary. I want to talk to those people and go, let's stop for a second and think about this. Let's look at evidence. Let's look at the past. Let's look at what we're seeing now. And let's be open-minded about things. I just really don't want to pigeonhole this, whatever religion you're in, and say that's it. I'm just going to leave faith. I'm going to leave it up to faith. I'm going to leave it up to this. I'm going to leave it up to my God. You have the ability to change things.
Yes. Well, what you're going to find, especially as you dive deeper into these conversations, is there are essentially two paradigms for morality. Either there is objective morality or there's not. This is law of excluded middle. These are your two options. It either exists or it doesn't. And people who are religious have a tendency to ascribe to the former. They honestly think that morality does exist in some objective sense and that it is dictated by some deity of some sort. So when you tell them that it's up to us to do this, they're telling you that we're just flawed creatures. We're not infallible. We're going to make a ton of mistakes. God's perfect, and he already gave us perfect law, so let's just do what he's going to do. These are the sorts of problems that we're running into still in today's day and age. We find this rampant throughout this country. And I'm glad that we have people like you who really do consider that something worth addressing, at the very least.
Well, we have to keep in mind that when you consider the U.S. prison population and its demographics, that atheists, even though they represent 3% of the U.S. population, they only are represented at the rate of 0.1% in the prison population. So that might start giving you a clue as to who has a better sense of morals. The religiously affiliated, or the ones who have a prison population that's 1/30th of their population in the U.S.
It's true.
What motives put them there? Was it religion or no?
Well, yeah. Well, again,
right, to what he said.
Yeah.
0.1%.
Well, the numbers do speak for themselves. To be fair, all right, we are still outmatched yet by the Mormons. They have us beat. There are fewer Mormons per capita than any other demographic, I think. I'm willing to stand by that statement, but I'm pretty sure Mormons are at the number one. They're the least violent, or at the very least, they're really, really good at not getting caught.
lots of things.
Whatever it may be. Yeah. I don't want to make assumptions, though. So
no, I think that that's another cool, level-headed group on its own.
did you just call the Mormons level-headed?
Well, I haven't seen. Okay, let's discuss my inexperience with Mormons in the first place. But more credit to them. They are very dedicated to certain things like keeping their body pure and all that stuff, being very healthy. Yes, very strict in their religious views, but I never thought of Mormons as violent or as making decisions extremely ill to humanity.
See, I agree. I think that I find it almost, and I'm going to use a lame word, I find it kind of icky. Really, the reason why I find the morality of the Mormons kind of icky is they're not necessarily doing it because they want to. They're doing it because they feel that if they don't, they're going to get punished for it in some weird way, some horrific way, mind you. And that's just immoral. For one, I find it horrific to teach your children that there's a decent chance that they're going to hell. I think that's in and of itself a horrible thing. Or people that they know and love. I think that's a horrific doctrine. I don't think you're going to find a lot of people that don't believe in that doctrine that disagree.
Fair enough.
Yeah. But I have it. Okay. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. I can go on this tangent.
Just last bit on it. I feel like it's very isolationist society. Almost to that. I shouldn't talk about another one I don't know that well, Jehovah's Witnesses, but I guess they're not very singlered out because those guys go door to door. But Mormons, you don't really see them going out trying to recruit more Mormons. They stay in their own bubble and they do what they think's best for them. Now, to what you say, is that a benefit to humanity? They're not hurting it.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Dan Barker, I think, has a really good example of this. It's easy to understand. Dan Barker is known for doing his public debates, formal public debates. He's very, very good at it. I think he's done something along the lines of over 250. He's very good at it. And he describes a situation where he was having a debate against some Muslim guy. He found himself after the event was over having a conversation over dinner with him. And he was talking to one of these guys and he says, I'm just going to make up a name, Ajib. He says, you people are so nice. I hate to say it, but I did not expect to be treated this nice. You guys are wonderful. And Ajib looks at him and says, well, I have to be kind to you. For, I think he said something like, Muhammad commands me to be. And Dan Barker, he said, he kind of got the shivers for a moment. He's like, oh, so you're saying that if Muhammad didn't tell you to be nice to me, that you wouldn't be nice to me? Is that what you're saying? So yeah, it stops them in their tracks, but it gives you that icky feeling. At least it does for me. And I don't know how to describe it better than that. I'd have to look into the language.
I understand. And I feel that sometimes where it's like, it's amazing to see someone rationalize their behaviors on a belief, rationalize their actions on someone else punishing them. It's something that you would see in school. It's something you would see from a child. And now it's kind of developed now in an adult. And not to say that they're adults that believe in religion or children, just that they have a different person they're afraid of pissing off. To make it blunt, they think that, this is their timeout. This is their punishment. Like if they don't do these things this particular way, ultimately daddy's going to spank you. Well, you
find this in a lot of different ways too. So for example, you have that. You also have people who swear in karmic justice, the karma, but then you can take it a step further and get into like reincarnation. But anyway, so this has a lot of stripes. And I honestly think that this is somewhat inherent. It's like in our nature as humans to do this. I'm honestly not sure. But anyway, we're getting pretty sidetracked, unfortunately, which is fine. I think the conversation was fun. But I want to kind of get back to what your questions or comments might be as to FreeThought Fort Wayne or possibly on the humanist movement or something along those lines. Do you have any questions for them?
So, like with FreeThought Fort Wayne and the Humanist, all of this, what are some actions outside of the podcast or, other events that are going on where you guys are really well represented, or, other things that are going on that I could either participate in or, just follow?
Well, we do sponsor lectures and seminars. We sponsor a lot of humanitarian work as well. We try to do as much as we can with what we don't have the largest budget, so we don't get to do as much of the humanitarian aid as we'd like, which is really unfortunate. But we have a constant line of ladies that take recycled bags and turn them into mats. They crochet them into mats.
Awesome.
But we also do, like, for example, I think it was 2 months ago, or maybe it was just a month ago, they did a survival bag thing for the homeless. I helped put the bags together. I wasn't able to help distribute them. We also do, Chris, I think, would be better equipped to handle this question. He's actually a member of the board. What are your thoughts on this one, Chris?
You hit most of them. I mean, we've also volunteered with Community Food Harvest and handing out food to those in need. We've also done haircuts for the homeless, if you didn't mention that, as well as the goodie bag distribution and or gift bag distribution, however one wanted to say it. I think that's really the main ones that we've been trying to continue lately.
We do sponsor certain other types of events. So, for example, we're actually holding a debate with John Lawless. I can't remember who his opponent's going to be, and it's not even official yet. We're still working this out. It's possible that we might not be able to do this, but we're at least trying to get the ball rolling on this. So these are the sort of events that we like to try and sponsor. So I'm concerned with propagating education, factual information to people. So that's why I'm involved with this particular program. One, I find it incredibly fun. And two, like I said, I really enjoy trying to educate people. I think that's great. I would have loved to have been a teacher. I really think that.
I like it. So it makes a lot of sense. You get a bigger presence than just, and I'm not saying this is nothing, but you have a presence physically out there too. That's
Absolutely.
Huge. Within the podcast, within this, what are some of the things that you guys, really stand out to you? Like, what's been some of the biggest topics that you've covered that I've missed?
Well, the number one that comes to mind for me personally, my favorite episode that we've done, we were able to have Anthony Magnabosco on our show. Anthony Magnabosco, that, mind you, I was humbled. I just have to say this, humbled to have him on our show. It was wonderful. The man's a very well-spoken gentleman. But he's involved with the movement called street epistemology. This was something that I find myself personally interested in. I think that this would definitely be on a hobby basis. I don't have enough time to do it anywhere near the scale that he does. But what he does is he walks out into the streets and he waits for people who agree to want to be interviewed for a little quick 5-minute interview. Hey, how you doing? You want to have a chat about what you believe and why, actually. So once he gets the conversation started, his job is to use what's known as the Socratic method. It's an approach where you ask questions that the person is going to need to answer, and that's all you do. You just keep asking questions. You get them to find the answer for themselves. And the idea for this is you want to get them to identify whether or not the methods that they are using to determine whether or not something is more than likely true, whether or not those methods are reliable. So you just ask questions to kind of find out whether or not that paradigm is a worthy paradigm.
Okay, I like that.
And I'm sorry, that was a huge highlight for me for this show. In fact, before I forget, as a matter of fact, by the time this episode airs, we'll have officially have our new YouTube services up. The episodes are going to be archived in the order that we made them. We have somewhere along the lines of, I think, 70 videos or so. So it's going to take probably a month or two to get them all up and running. And then as we continue on, we'll continue to post them in the future. So if you'd like to help support us, look for Hoosier Humanist Hour on YouTube.
That's awesome. First of all, big fan of YouTube. Second of all, becoming a big fan of this. Chris.
One thing I'd like to say about that before we move on is that's one thing that I actually am not the biggest fan of, this street epistemology thing.
Oh, really?
because of the fact that you catch random people off guard, and I feel like that's a little underhanded. And even when I saw it used as a technique by Ray Comfort in the Atheist Delusion
Mhm.
video, it left a very sour taste in my mouth. I really don't appreciate catching people off guard like that, especially when they are random bystanders. Now, I have
Sure.
no problem targeting people who are actively picketing, or causing a ruckus with their religious protest or whatever. I have no problem targeting those because they honestly deserve whatever's coming to them.
Well,
But yeah, go ahead.
to be fair, Anthony Magnabosco gets this sort of critique all the time. The way that he defends himself is to say that he isn't trying to attack religion specifically. What he's doing is he's advocating for the Socratic method and to get people to evaluate their own epistemology for XYZ. Now, typically, yes, people want, and I'm going to emphasize that because he offers the conversation up. You know, he'll let you walk away if you don't want to do it. So when the conversation starts, the person picks the topic, and generally, yes, it is religious, but he'll talk about anything. He's done a lot with politics. He's done things on aliens or things with spirituality or karma or just, ghosts even, which isn't necessarily religious. I'm just saying that to be fair. I understand how it very easily could have a negative connotation associated because it seems as if he's evangelizing for atheism, and on its face, I can see why it would look like that. But he describes it as evangelizing for street epistemology, the movement itself, is the way he says it.
But I could agree. I've seen, going to YouTube as we're discussing it, people being interviewed, and it seems like almost an ambush, even though it's not, as Caleb just described. But it's a regular person going about their regular day, and although given the topic, are now put in a position to defend. I could see how that would seem like an ambush or an attack. So, but now this is coming from an outsider's perspective. I've never seen it. I don't know, the extent. I think it would be better in a call-in kind of, if somebody wants to reach out, somebody who's got a planned defense.
Well, I've got your cake, and you can eat it too, sir. I promise you that.
You've got cake?
Oh yes, I think something that you'd be really interested in would be the atheist experience. I know that I've mentioned it to you in person outside of the show. I don't honestly know if you've ever really looked into it, but since you brought it up, I really think that the atheist experience is right up your alley if this is the sort of thing that interests you. In fact, it really interests me. I've said on this show in the past, probably more than once, that I ultimately say that it was Matt Dillahunty on the atheist experience that truly got me to openly admit to myself that I was an atheist. I wasn't just a non-believer in Christianity. I was an atheist. And he really got me out of that shell. He was a huge pivotal character in that role in my life, or for that role in my life, excuse me. What the show is, the premise, is there's two hosts. People will call in, and the idea is, tell us what you believe and why. We will tell you whether or not we think that you have reasonable or rational conclusions. And that's it. That's basically the premise of the show. And on its face, that might sound kind of lame when pitched in that way. I think it's fascinating watching two people have a conversation, trying to convince the other that the other person's wrong and they're right. It's engaging and it's live, which I love that aspect of it too. And unlike street epistemology, as you were saying, they don't go out, they don't make outgoing calls. They wait for people to call them and explain whatever nonsense it is that they want to explain.
See, that takes that ambush piece away. It takes that pulling someone out of their everyday and saying, hey, you know what? I'm putting the ball out there. Somebody pick it up and run. Rather than, now you got somebody who's coming for it, rather than handing someone a ball and saying run. So I'm a sports kind of guy, so that's how I make analogies.
So far as FreeThought Fort Wayne goes, are there any remaining questions that you might have before we move?
No, like as far as what this is about, and it's an education. And I love that idea. So, and it's to do it in a way that betters everyone. And religion, whether it's in or out of the equation, being able to do these things, to think productively for humans, I think is something that everyone should do. So I agree. I want to be a part of this.
Absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what, for those of you out there who are interested, every Sunday from 11 to 1, we have a meetup at Old Crown. It's off of Campus Drive right there in front of IPFW. If you're coming from Coliseum, anybody and everybody is more than welcome to join us there. You don't have to be a member to sit down and have a conversation with us, but obviously we hope that one day you do want to participate. If you want more information, you can visit our website at freethoughtfw.org. One more time, that's freethoughtfw.org for additional information or contact info. We also have a meetup on Wednesdays for the adult crowds specifically. I think it's at Matt Anthony's, I believe. Is that right?
Anywhere where we feel like we want to go. So it changes.
Okay. Well, if you're interested, we also have meetups on Wednesdays. You can find us on Facebook or talk to existing members to find out where that's going to be. It varies, but it's always on Wednesdays. So there's that. Now, any further questions from you, man? You got anything for me?
Important. Well, actually, I want to flip the script and have any questions for me, like as in, what made you think that I should be on the show? Like, me.
Yes. Well, I honestly saw what I thought to be a humanist inside of you. I've never heard you bring up any sort of doctrine or religious defense for XYZ. I've never heard you say that somebody should or ought to do something because of a religious reason. And you're a very clear, well-spoken. I consider you relatively articulate, like most people that I like to associate with, like these guys, for example. I think these guys are very well-spoken and articulate. These are the sort of people that I like to surround myself with, and I thought that you'd make an excellent addition to this show. I think you're very smart. That's an important thing. I think that even though you haven't honestly spent a lot of time, if any, really diving into humanism or atheism, I think that properly motivated, and obviously it's something that interests you, I think that you could really succeed in this, and what I probably do it a lot better than I do, in fact. I saw somebody that I thought could be a part of my team, that I would be proud to have a part of my team, in fact. So I had a question for you then. Now, you had mentioned in the beginning that you're not really an atheist. Not that it really matters, but you asked to flip the script. I'm just kind of curious, where would you say you fall on that spectrum between atheism and deism? Like, where are you?
What was the one about? I think it was deism.
Deism,
where I don't know. I'll be the first one. Like, I have no business, because I might be smart. I might be able to infer a lot of things and reference a lot of physics, biology, facts that we've seen. I can't prove them. I'm not smart enough to show you them in a graph or even reference it online. I just can only go by what I was taught in school and what I've learned. I was an A or B student. I learned a lot of this stuff. I feel like inferring all those other things, religion, beliefs, through all the other things I've known, science makes sense. And to look at history and where we sit in history, we're at a time where we are learning so much, so fast. It's hard to sit here and go, what are we going to learn next? What's the next step? I don't think we've peaked. I don't think we know what's after this. I think we've got certain sciences and proofs that energy and brain waves are what create what we've got right now. That's great. But I land somewhere between theism and atheism. Would you say is deism? Or
No.
Atheism is a belief of?
Atheism isn't a belief. Atheism, okay, that's actually great. Let's go here. I'm glad that you asked that question. So there are a lot of misconceptions about atheism in general, and I'm glad that we have an opportunity to discuss this with somebody who might have one of those misconceptions. So Atheism is a position on a single issue. Do you believe a God exists? You either do believe a God exists or you don't believe a God exists. We'll get into that, the more specific details here in a moment. But that's, as far as I'm concerned, it's a binary issue. You either believe or you don't. If you're up in the air about it, you don't know. You don't believe, then whatever.
Where does atheism land in that?
So that is atheism. Atheism is a lack of belief in a God or gods. It isn't the declaration that a God or gods don't exist. It is a lack of belief in a God or God. So this is a very important distinction because it gets muddled a lot colloquially. When I declare, which I do often now, I've become more and more proud of it, that I am in fact an atheist, a lot of people just automatically assume that I am willing to assert that a God doesn't exist. That is not the case. I am willing, however, to suggest that I don't believe a God exists for good reasons.
Yeah.
Now,
I would side with that. That's if that's what atheist means, that's where I'm at.
okay.
I don't find myself egotistical enough. I don't find myself, what's the word? I don't think I'm that smart. I don't think I'm that
Hubris.
Yeah, I don't have that hubris to say, you know what, God doesn't exist. And I also don't have the hubris in the other direction to say gods do exist.
Okay, so we can actually get a little bit deeper into this. So there are essentially two classes of atheism. There's positive and negative atheism. Most people, for example, are positive atheists when it comes to, say, Zeus. Okay, there are people who will assert reasonably that Zeus does not, in fact, exist. Okay, that's positive atheism. Now, then there's negative atheism, which is otherwise known as soft atheism, which is what I had described before. It's merely saying, okay, well, I don't know that Zeus doesn't exist. I just don't believe that he doesn't exist. I just do not believe it. So with that in mind, now we also have to add on a little clarifier that tends to come up after this, which is, well, what about agnosticism? All right, because I've heard these two terms floated around. Agnosticism is to be in a state where you don't think that you can know at the moment, at least epistemically.
Not within comprehension.
Not even necessarily that, I would say, but epistemically, it's just unknowable at the moment. So we can't actually know what it is. So, for example, what is dark matter, right? Right now, because we can't figure out what it is, if somebody throws out a hypothesis, whether or not it's true, I'm going to remain agnostic on that unless they can come up with a means to actually prove their case. And then there's Gnostic, which is to say, I do know. So you can be an agnostic theist, which is, I believe in a God, I just can't prove it to you. I can't honestly know myself. I just know and believe it. I believe it, I know it, I just can't 100% know that this is true. So that's an agnostic theist. An agnostic atheist is myself.
I'm hearing a lot of differences between know, believe, and don't know. And I'll be the first to say that I don't believe in anything. I don't have faith in any particular category.
Well,
I don't
good.
have a belief that says, based off of any logical evidence, based off of any truths that I know to be evident, I don't have a belief of something being there. I'll use the word open-minded. I really don't want to make an inference. I don't want to make assumptions. I'm not doing it because the lack thereof faith would send. I don't do it because of lack of. It just comes down to I don't believe in one thing or another, because me as a human, back to being a humanist, I don't know right now. So I'm in the don't know category, the don't believe category, but I want to stay in a spot that says I'm not closing down any channels. I'm not closing down any pieces of information.
Okay, so then I would go ahead and make the assumption at this point that you are in fact an agnostic atheist like myself. You could be a Gnostic atheist, which would be that positive atheism, that assertion that there is no God. You can be a Gnostic atheist. Most people don't take that position. It's, in my opinion, impossible to defend.
I don't have that arrogance. That's the word.
Mm-hmm.
I think, I'm not saying that everybody who does is arrogant, but you have to have a stand. And ultimately, to have that arrogance, to have that stand, then you have to have a new belief. And that belief is that there is no God.
Well, I
That's
think
your belief.
If there's a way that I can chime in here real quick, I think what we're touching on is a couple things. One is open-mindedness. Keep in mind that open-mindedness is good just as much as anything else is, which is to say, in moderation. There is a level of skepticism that also must be moderated, along the way. If you are completely skeptical of everything, then you're a fool. If you're completely open-minded about everything, then you're a fool.
You're gullible.
Right. So
and I don't want to land there.
Right.
I hear what you're saying.
And one of the issues that comes when you're saying that asserting something is a little egotistical and bold, I can assert with 100% certainty that the core of the moon is not made of cheese. I can assert that with 100% scientific certainty.
Correct.
Right.
And
that's what I'm talking about.
Right. And I would not deter you, sir. And I would not call you arrogant. I would call you a scientist. I would call you someone with facts and reasons. And they brought back moon rock that didn't turn out to be cheese.
Right.
So the point is, in the end, in my personal opinion, keyword being opinion, I don't think there's enough evidence towards or against anything to convince me. I'm open-minded, I'm listening, but I'm not convinced. I'm not, like I said, I'm not gonna start a fight without having the facts. I'm not gonna back something up without the evidence. I know that 2 + 2 = 4. I don't need, I could do that with confidence, but if you put I was in calculus, but I don't remember it that well. If you put a calculus equation in front of me and you said this equals this, then I'm going to go, how did we get here? And if you can provide the evidence and why that works out, I'll believe you. But you have to have the evidence and how those things function to support it.
How do you deal personally, if you don't mind me asking, and if you don't mind telling this to the world, how do you deal with your daily life as to whether or not something is a good, ethical, or appropriate thing to do or not? By and large, obviously.
Okay, so for me,
I just want to see how close we are to humanism, because I just want to emphasize here. By the way, I should say this because I don't want to make it seem like I'm just asking random stupid questions. I'm asking this particular question at the very least, because I want to see how similar our worldviews are, and I'm hoping that somebody else out there who might happen to be listening to this can share with your experience and or any of our experiences, and realize that, hey, maybe humanism, the way, the truth, and the light, if you will. So anyway, that having been said, the question, I'll pass it on to you.
I love it. So first of all, I work retail. So if you want to know whether or not there's good or evil, work retail. And that's my personal opinion on it. Because personally, I work a job that is customer service. Maybe not perfect for this scenario right now, but the truth is, I provide people with services. I help them inherently. I'm a salesman. I sell stuff for a living. So your reasoning would be, I make money. This is why I do this. But I used to sell mattresses, and I still help my friends on how to, right? Currently, I sell pools, patios, and stuff like that. Every interaction with a customer is started with compliments, just getting to know someone with a positive energy. You can attest to this. I do this most of the time. Sometimes I come off like, we met the first couple times and you didn't like me. But in the end, I operate to develop a relationship with someone that's positive. I want to have a overall, if nothing else, forgettable experience. But it helps you. That's what I do every single day. I don't do anything inherently every day to better humanity, but I do the people around me in my scope of things. I want to be helpful. I want to be productive. Sometimes I'm not. I'll take nothing as a win. I didn't provide a negative service. I just provided no service to bettering humanity. And personally, I want to, whenever I get an opportunity, whenever I interact with someone, leave them better off, whether it's educating them about a piece of patio furniture, selling them a brand new pool, helping them out with their busted up spa, whatever it might be. That's my job, but that's also what I would do if I had a friend who needed help, somebody who needs to, redo their home. Do I have negative, instances? Yeah, of course. What motivates me as a person, I don't have that. I just don't feel like I need to strive for like this huge greater good of God and all this stuff. I operate, somewhat selfishly. I'm not trying to change the world right now. I'm trying to change the world around me.
There you go.
I'm trying to be positive in my environment every day. Just had a conversation before I got here, before I got off work. Guy called from a different store, just needed to do a transfer. And I just picked up the phone. Hey, how you doing? Just a great greeting right off the start. He goes, man, you sound really happy. And I go, well, I try to. I just, the people around me, I want to create a positive energy. My dad died when I was young. And one of the biggest things that I can remember was at the funeral, how many people were there? 400 plus people in a church. And he's not well known. He's not like somebody you would see on the news and go, hey, I know him. He impacted people's lives by being just there, by being someone it's great to talk to, have fun, have a drink with, have come over, paint your house, whatever he could do to lighten up a day, go camping. There were so many things. And when it comes down to being moral, being all of these great philosophical questions, when you go home, when you go to sleep, do you feel like you impacted the people around you? Do you feel like you did something positive? Even if it's negative, what are you going to do to change it? Or if it was nothing at all, at least you didn't do something negative. It sounds super like, I feel like I'm running for president or something. But
I get what you're saying, because I feel the same way. I really do. I set my sights a little higher personally. You should. I hope to one day affect the world in some positive way. But at the very least, I'll quote you on this. That was a great line. I hope to at least affect the world around me in some positive way. And there are so many theists out there who would argue that without God, you can't derive any sort of real purpose in life. This is a very real thing for most theists, I would argue. Most. As you had just mentioned, your dad, whether or not he was a theist, I don't know, care.
He became, in the last few months, theist. He grew up Catholic, steered away from Catholicism, and then came back, in the last, when he went on to hospice, and I was still kind of too young to know what hospice meant. But he was on his deathbed, on his way, and he went back to finding something to believe in. And the years in between, I grew up open-minded, and I think those years in between is where he had the biggest effect on society. And when he came back to it, it came down to, on those few days, he did more research and he started looking more into, things that he chose to believe in. What comforts you in those last few days, months, years, whatever it is. I have no place, being as healthy as I know right now, to try to say what would I do on my deathbed. But what comforted him at that time was theology, was Catholicism.
Well, I'm not going to give people crap for finding God on their deathbed, but one thing that I will say is whether or not your father was religious, I like how you described his funeral. I know that sounds morbid. I'm just going to say that, but
That's true.
You had said that, man, there were like 400 some odd people. It was this huge thing. It's this big ordeal. Let's just make the assumption that God doesn't exist for the sake of argument. God's non-existence does not impact the fact that he had a very real impact on every one of the people that was there, including yourself. And there are people who will argue that, it's all, in the end, it's all going bye-bye. Everything's going to stop one day, and then the party will be over, and we're not coming back and under your model. So what's the ultimate purpose? It doesn't matter. There can be no purpose. Well, you know what? It matters to those people. It matters to you. And that's what matters. That's purpose. That's meaning.
That's what a humanist, as far as I'm concerned, and it being outside, kind of says, like, what are we doing to better people?
Now, I know you,
mentally,
and this is
emotionally.
Normally this would be rhetorical, but I'll ask the question to kind of emphasize the point here. Your dad has been passed away for a number of years now. Would you say that whether or not a God exists, that he had a meaning, a purpose in your life? Would you say that? Would you say that
beyond,
you can derive purpose for yourself, an impact that he made on you?
Yeah.
So, what I'm getting at here is, even beyond death, we can still derive purpose. This isn't purely a theistic notion here. You don't need God for this. And I think it's actually somewhat insulting myself when somebody looks you dead in the eye and say your life can't have meaning unless you believe what I believe.
Yeah.
I think that's utter nonsense and insulting, as I mentioned before. And anyway, I'm sorry. I don't mean to detract from your story here. I just thought, man, you're hitting spot on with a lot of issues that I thought would be really fun to talk about. And what I find amazing is that we're able to fit so many different conversations. You almost had me going on this rant about there's this stereotype where there are no atheists in foxholes, right? That's one of those things that's been propagated in fact, I remember hearing that in school from my teachers. It would just slip off the tongue, excuse me, or they would say it for reasons XYZ. But I remember one in particular, my government econ teacher in high school, my 12th grade year. He literally said that to the class. He's like, guys, there are no atheists in potholes or foxholes, and I don't even know why he was bringing it up, to be honest with you. But I do remember him specifically saying that. I really thought about that, and at the time I was a theist, and I thought, damn straight. Ain't no one going down in them situations and not believing in God. What are you going to hold on to? What's going to motivate you to jump on that grenade? Why would you do that?
It's the first thing that we talk about is somebody sacrificing, making decisions for freedoms, for people back home. Not for God. I don't know any God that says, go suit up, put on 80 pounds of gear, weapons in hand, and force people to believe what you believe and kill them if they don't. It's not. Well, that's not a religious piece to me.
The issue is that the Bible and the Quran have both been interpreted as such.
Yeah.
Because honestly, there are parts in there that do tell you to do that, but it's one of those things to where you need to modulate what you get from your religion and why you do certain things.
Yeah. Well, like for the Quran, for example, it specifically says on there that you can't kill somebody, or you can't force, rather, somebody to become a Muslim. But the restrictions on killing the infidels or bit more loose. You can work with those, to sort of stay on this just for a little bit longer, because I want to fight some of these atheist stereotypes as best I can whenever I get the opportunity. There's a guy, he's an atheist humanist activist. His name is Seth Andrews. He's a big name in this crowd. He has a podcast called The Thinking Atheist. You can find it on YouTube or any of your podcast sources. He's extremely entertaining. He used to be a Christian radio DJ for like 10 years or something before he deconverted, and he's got the perfect voice for this. He's funny, really funny. But I bring this up because he did an episode specifically on atheist soldiers who have seen and been in combat, or the soldiers that survived, some horrific thing like jumping on the grenade or taking a bullet for somebody else, secret servicemen, things like that. Even cops. Like, I've had a conversation years ago with a coworker. This is back when I was working fast food years ago, about how we couldn't imagine how somebody could motivate themselves as, for example, a Secret Service agent to take a bullet for the president if they didn't think there was some great beyond waiting for them. I had that conversation, and I'm somewhat ashamed to say it, but I'm not going to go down that road of regrets, because I don't really have too many regrets. I didn't know any better. I was ignorant, and it's just the way it is. But he fights this stereotype hard, and he does it well. Seth Andrews, the Thinking Atheist. That guy is a genius, and he's going to do great things for this film. It already has. In fact, he's been known to travel with Matt Dillahunty, the host of the main host, the most well-known anyway, of the Atheist Experience, and Aaron Ra, whom I mentioned earlier. They went on a tour a while back. They called it what do they call it? It was a parody on the Trinity. Anyway, the Unholy Trinity Tour. That's what it was. That one was really fun. Look at any one of their seminars that they did while they were on that tour. That's a lot of fun. Anyway, guys, I hate to cut it off right there. I really think that we could continue this conversation for days. This is really fun. I want to thank you, Josh, for joining us today, and I hope to see you more in the future. And I really hope that you are interested in joining FreeThought. You and anyone else who's interested, one more time to reiterate, you can sign up and join to be a member. You don't have to. You can meet up with us on Sundays at Old Crown, 11 to 1. If you want more information, freethoughtfortwayne.org. I'm sorry, did you have something that you wanted to say?
Just wanted to say thank you for being a part of this. Get to kind of introduce myself a little more. And just to kind of reiterate Chris's thought earlier, this is going to be my favorite episode.
Mine too, I think. Well, thank you for your thoughts and your input, Josh. I want to thank you for participating in this. I want to thank you guys as well, Chris and Andrew. And thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.
Thanks, guys.
That is all the time we have for you this week. This has been the Hoosier Humanist Hour. Be sure to check out FreeThought Fort Wayne on Facebook and on meetup.com. Thank you for listening, and we hope your days are filled with logic, reasoning, and the eternal quest for knowledge.
Want more information?